we're not on the air yet.
Okay.
We're not, right?
No, we're not. We're not on there yet. We're live now. We are live. We are live on social media, but we have not begun recording our Sunday show yet.
Okay, so we are live on social media.
Yes, we are.
Oh, good.
So you were the king of the city, basically, of New York City, right?
Well, let's just say during the one of my favorite movies, The Wolf of Wall Street, my man Leo. I sort of ruled the Wall Street parties back then, which is pretty amazing. And,
so that puts you in the Rachel you could tell, the female version of you.
I guess you could say that, yeah.
Right.
And then I, as you may know, I got profiled on the front page of the Wall Street Journal's America's First Corporate Concierge, and so that kind of developed this whole big thing. And my big emphasis was corporate entertaining, and so it was pretty crazy, that life of New York. And now we're not in New York as much, and I'm down in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina.
Well, Richard, when do you want to start recording?
We immediately.
All right, here we go. These are Andy. Just to let you know, these are 2 9-minute breaks. We're live on social media for the whole time, but you'll hear me wrap up at about the 8:30 mark on both breaks. Okay.
All right. Cool.
All right, here we go. 100.1 FM, AM 1020, KDK AM. This is Cars, Stars, and everything in between. He is the star, Richard Bazzi. I'm Bubba from 100.7 Star. And I got to tell you, the person we're about to talk to you has probably met more stars than all of us combined. Ladies and gentlemen, if you ever saw the Fire Festival Netflix documentary, there's no way of watching it without knowing who Andy King is. Andy King, welcome to Cars, Stars, and everything in between.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on today.
Andy, one of the very first things that struck me in a 3-minute conversation with you is how intelligent and articulate you are. And so when I see that, and I did watch the show, the Fire Festival. I watched it. I hate to admit that I really liked it. And there's so many pieces of it that I really want to talk about. But you're so together, you're so articulate and so intelligent. How did somebody like you get pulled into this mess, if you will? I can't imagine you not have smelling this out a lot sooner.
Well, I'm a very loyal person, and I'm also a huge supporter of the younger generation. And I happen to have worked with Billy McFarland, the founder of the Fire Festival, for several years before, hosting over 45 events for him in New York City. And I saw the good and I saw the bad, but I kept thinking, hey, when he called me, I was hosting the World Cup Pro-Am Ski Championships in Squaw Valley, and I had my nightmares on my plate with too much snow instead of not enough snow, and nowhere for anybody to park, like 150,000 people coming to view, and on and on. And the phone rings, and it's Billy. And he said, listen, I've got a problem. Can you get to the Bahamas? And I said, well, geez, I've got my hands full right now. But I said, let me do my best. He said, I'll send a jet to pick you up. And boom, that should have been red light number one. I thought it was green light number one. Like, hey, everything's good. He's raised the proper amount of money and we're all set. Now that should have been the biggest warning light right there, right?
Yes, but you live in a world of private jets and the glamour and the glory. So you lived in that world, right?
Yeah. It's a crazy world. And then, of course, the hard piece for me is that I run an event business based on sustainability, and we're trying to shrink the carbon footprint on all the large events that take place around the world. And so these private jets and big super yachts are a problem for me, even though I'm seen on them a fair amount and riding on them. But everything in moderation, right?
Well, they say. They say. I'm not sure I agree with that. If you like it, you like it. I mean, whatever it is.
You're right.
But anyway, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you. I think you're telling such a wonderful story. It's so interesting. I don't think you could see this if it's a documentary, a docudrama, or whatever you might call it. But I don't think anybody could look at it and think it's not interesting. And you wonder in so many questions. So Billy calls you. He sends a private jet for you. Then what?
Brings me to the Bahamas, and I have about 2 hours to make my assumptions and to give my recommendations. And basically, after 2 hours of walking around, I'm looking at a situation which is basically no infrastructure, which is exactly what you don't want. Can you imagine if I said to you, hey, can you build a car dealership or open it in 2 weeks without any electricity, without any plumbing, and no parking lot? You're like, what are you smoking? But I said, you know what? We can do this as long as we change the messaging immediately. It's not going to be the most fancy music festival in the world. It's going to be amazing on a beautiful island in the Bahamas with the crystal clear water and girls in bikinis and drinking tequila. But no, it's not going to be luxurious. And we need to change the messaging immediately. And of course, as you may know, the messaging got changed 10 hours before the first guests arrived. And I had basically 6 weeks to change this whole thing.
But Andy, not to interrupt you, but what you just said is I mean, it's profound, because I still believe, I said to Chelsea today, this can work.
Absolutely.
This really can work.
Right. So, that's why every meeting we had, they said, Andy, when are you going to pull the plug? And I'm like, for 6 weeks, I'm like, I'm not pulling the plug yet. Trust me. Like, this is a beautiful island. It's incredible. You know, we have the talents already booked, but you're right. I mean, unfortunately, the world knows the story.
No, but pretend it doesn't, because I think it's so intriguing and so absolutely, it's like Fantasy Island, right? And it's everybody's fantasy. You know, the promotion was the girls, the music, the beach, the location, something everybody aspires. It's glamorous. It's fantasy. And I think everybody really, that's what makes this documentary so intriguing and so successful as I see it on Netflix. I watched it again last night, and man, I tell you, it can work. But so when you said change the messaging and change it and remove the word luxurious and substitute, the greatest music festival in the world, surrounded by all of the wonderful accoutrements of that lifestyle. Had you done that, but let me ask you this. A man's character is determined by the integrity of his intent, right? So if the intent, what was the intent? Was the intent to provide that, or was the intent fraud? And when I ask that question, and this isn't an aspersion cast in your direction at all, but when I say that, I say that I watched this documentary. I listened to Ja Rule say, yeah, it's not fraud, it's false advertising. I mean, come on. That's a nuance. And so when you know something deliberately, again, man's character determined by the integrity of his intent. Is the intent here to to steal money, defraud, or to provide that? What was, do you think, Billy's goal?
Well, honestly, Richard, I mean, like, I know Billy's parents. Like, I know we grew up in the same town in New Jersey. And so, Billy, as a young kid, it would be like friends of yours coming to you and saying, hey, Johnny. And you're like, Johnny, I've known him since he was 12 years old. Well, will you guide him and help him a little bit? You're like, hell yeah. And in your heart of hearts, some days you're like, Johnny, you're a little out there, buddy. You need to reel it in a little bit, and we need to be realistic here. And, and there was a lot of that going on. The sadness is that I had over 400 people working for me, and the only person that was in the fraudulent seat was Billy. And he was in charge of all of the money. That's it. Even the CEO, CFO, didn't matter. Like, no one was touching any of the money. Billy had everything on his little iPad and his laptop running around every day. And he had a vision and he had a dream. I don't want to sound like Martin Luther King, but it was like he had a dream. But unfortunately, that dream wasn't terribly realistic in the way that he was going about trying to make it happen. But he got to a point where he had the gift of gab. Richard, can you imagine? He could walk into any meeting, any room in New York City and raise millions of dollars at 25 years old. Like, wish I was that guy.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, it is crazy, but did he have a dream? And was the dream what? What was the dream? And, you do shed a whole different light by saying that you knew his parents, you knew him when he was 12. I mean, you do tend to believe people that you have history with like that.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, you really do. And when you say he was the only one into the fraud part, or the ability to create the fraud, all of those other people everybody I saw, everybody believed in it. Everybody believed they were doing the right thing. Everybody.
You could say we were drinking the Kool-Aid a little, maybe.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, everybody wanted this to be a success. And what Billy's vision was to create this luxury music festival, launch his app, and then create these festivals 2 or 3 around the world every year and create a brand that we go, oh my gosh, where's Fire this year? Oh, it's on Mykonos. Where is it? Oh, it's in Maui. Where is it? Boom, boom. Oh, it sells out before it even starts. You know, he had the ability to do it.
I'm sold. Let's go.
I know it.
If you're just tuning in, this is Andy King. We will return Cars, Stars, and everything in between on 100.1 FM, AM 1020 KDK. Stand by.
Andy, you're great.
God, well, I tell you this, you know, I don't want to give away too much, so we talk about it the next piece.
Stand by. Can I lead with a question?
You can do whatever you want.
Perfect. I'm just saving this real quick. And here we go. Stand by. Saving. Great job. By the way, everybody that's watching us on social media, thank you for joining us for Car Stars and everything in between. What you're hearing now, you'll be able to hear on Sunday on 100.1 FM, AM 1020 KDKA. All right, here we go. We're getting back in the recording now. 100.1 FM, AM 1020 KDKA. This is Car Stars and everything in between. He's the star, Richard Bazzi. I'm Bubba from 100.7 Star. And somebody that's interacted with a lot of stars. We're talking to Andy King. If you watched the Netflix documentary about the Fire Festival, we know that whenever something becomes television, a documentary, or movies, that there's a lot of creative editing through the course of what they film versus what ends up on the air. Andy, when you watched Fire Festival, the Netflix documentary, in your opinion, did they make this entire thing look better than it really was? Actually as it really was, or worse than it actually was?
Let me just say 4 letters. PTSD.
Oh boy. So I assume they made it feel worse than it actually was, or was it actually worse than it looked like?
It was pretty bad.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine that, Richard? It was actually worse than the documentary made it out to be.
Well, let's not say, there's a fine line there. Let me just say, you know, first of all, it's like Richard said at the beginning, wow, you know, I've talked to Andy for 3 minutes. Impressive, great guy. Can you imagine that the 3 minutes that I put in, my main 3 minutes in the Fire Festival documentary, have defined me in 100 million homes around the world because of Netflix's reach? My failed blowjob has made me this person. And I'm like,
what?
Can you imagine? I have worked for 35 years to be one of the most successful event planners in New York. And I am now known for a failed blowjob. Really? Is that what you want in your career? It's your legacy? Holy smokes. So yeah, it was pretty bad down there. But that is, and here's the irony, guys, is that Netflix came to my farm in New York State. We shot for 8 hours in my barn and on and on and on, you know, blah, blah, blah. And they're taking down the cameras and I poured myself a drink, you know, and good old Andy, I have to say, well, you know, there is one story I didn't tell you. What story do you think I told them then? Of course, the blowjob story. And I'm like, I know you're not going to use this. Why would you ever use it? No one wants to hear about this, but I'm just going to say it, you know. And of course, my lawyers the next day said, Andy, please tell us you didn't tell the blowjob story. I'm like, well, at the end, most of the cameras were off. Don't worry. They're like, you've got to call the director immediately. They got to pull that. You will have no career. You're done. And I'm like, oh, come on, guys. Like, please. So I call Chris Smith. You guys know Chris is an amazing director. And he did, anyway, he did Tiger King after me. And then he did the girl that got kidnapped in Portugal.
Amazing director.
Yeah, he's incredible. And so I call Chris, and Chris is like, Andy, trust me, you're not some flaming gay guy. You're a gay guy, but you're not flipping your hair and screaming, yo, go girl. You're the guy who basically said in a very matter-of-fact way, this is what happened. And Billy asked me too, and I did my mouthwash. I got in the car and on and on. He said, your delivery was so great that we have to keep it in, because this is going to basically be the piece in the documentary that demonstrates just how crazy it got down there. That one of the best event planners in the world is willing to give a blowjob to save a $25 million music festival. This is crazy. We need to keep it in. Trust me, Andy, the way you presented it is good. So I said, okay, great. So we kept it in there. But, you know, it's fascinating in retrospect. I guess I wouldn't change anything, but boy, yeah, it was one crazy, crazy thing down there. You can't.
Well, my heart's beating pretty fast right now. And I'm usually pretty open and transparent. And I'm known for that too. But I will tell you, my AFib is kicking in.
Well, Richard, you know, it is like, I never dreamed, you know, there I was. And Ellen DeGeneres, she's like, Andy, why would you tell 100 million people around the world about a blowjob? I'm like, well, I didn't think it would go that far. My father always said, no one watches documentaries and they don't make any money. Great. Not here. No, I mean, Fire is probably one of Netflix's top documentaries in history, but it's because of pop culture today. And where are we right now? Social media. Well, what do you think made Fire Festival so popular right out of the gate?
Yeah.
Social media, the orange tile, the posting the models. What do you think brought down Fire Festival?
Same thing.
The effing cheese sandwich that went viral in 2 minutes.
From the young kids.
Cheese sandwich that I served to 2 drunk guests, that I told them to go to the employee tent and get one of these cheese sandwiches because you need to sober up. Dinner is going to be served in 3 hours. Uh-oh. Remind me later. I lost you guys. Hold on.
We're here.
We're here.
Okay.
We're here.
You just can't see me.
I see you.
You can. Okay. My page is saying something. But at the end of the day, literally, I served this cheese sandwich trying to help people, telling everybody, hey guys, you know, only 4 or 6 of the guests, you know, that we'll be serving dinner shortly. And of course, a catastrophe is happening in the corner. One of my employees runs over the main water line. There's like geyser shooting up in the air. It's the story of my life down there. And I turn around. There are 500 kids in line for this cheese sandwich. 500. And all the girls have their phones out and they're taking pictures of this. And it went viral in 2 minutes around the world. And that, guys, is when every one of the acts canceled on us. And if you can imagine, all our big performers were 10 minutes away at Atlantis on Nassau, a 10-minute plane ride away, ready to perform and start performing on our $2 million stage. And every one of them canceled at that point.
Oh my God. I don't know that I realized that. I guess I didn't connect the two. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It is.
I mean, they were there. Like, the stage was there. I mean, if they had started to perform, I mean, you guys, you know, no one talks about the fact that Woodstock, the most famous, most successful music festival in the world, 50 miles of backup of cars on the New York State Thruway, no water. I mean, mudslides, drug overdose, nowhere for
people dying. Yes.
Like, no one talks about that. I mean, we were this close to having a bunch of kids go, shit, you know, we slept on a damp mattress because it rained the night before. The food may not have been flown in from around the world, but it was really good. Sexiest people we've ever seen, the most beautiful water, coolest music. We were this close.
Andy, can it be done? We talked a little earlier. Can it be done again?
My goal, Richard, is to do it again, because guess what? I'm scarred now with this, and the world is waiting for me to make an announcement for the next Fire Festival. And until I do that, I don't want to say I'm toxic, but for a lot of my celebrity associates and friends in LA, their publicists will say, no, partnering with Andy King now. No, we're not. That's not. Yeah, he's toxic.
So like, with that in mind, so what are you doing now?
Well, I'm doing a fair amount of speaking engagements where I go from university to university. I was at the University of Mexico a few weeks ago, and I talk about failure, and I talk about adversity, and I talk about the power of social media, and I talk about the fact that, you know, when someone hands you a case of really ripe lemons, you better make the best lemonade anybody's ever had before, which is what I do every day now. And I demonstrate, and I get out there. Kids are so risk adverse today because all their parents coddle them, right? And so they're scared to death to take any risks. So I get out there and I say, kids, get out there and fail. Get out there and take a job in a small startup that's trying to drive positive change, you know? Right. And it's so important. So that's amazing.
Do you still do event planning?
Oh, yeah. But we're, I mean, as you guys can imagine, fire hit, my life went upside down. The documentary is released. I had 8 TV show offers. I traveled around the world. I basically raised, I don't know, almost about $500,000 to pay back everybody in the Bahamas. And I went from speaking from Australia to Moscow to London to Argentina. I mean, you name it. I went around the world doing speaking engagements, raising this money. And so I'm proud about that. But then wonderful COVID hit and put a halt on most of my travel, and then put a halt on my show. My show basically is a show where I fly around the world saving large events that are going wrong. Can you imagine how stressful that would be?
Yeah, that can be pretty crazy. A very good friend of mine produced and directed Live Aid.
Oh, okay.
So, and it wasn't Geldof, it was Tony Verna. And
amazing. Well, boy, he has stories for you.
Yeah, well, he did. He's passed now, but yeah, the stories were credible. But you know, like you said, somebody has to take a chance. Somebody has to go out and do it.
I'm not saying I sit by the phone every day, but
right.
I have so many people approach me. You know, I have a festival idea, I have this, I have that, I have that, and at the end, we go through 5 calls and like, Andy, will you back us? I'm like, I lost over $1 million at Fire Festival. I'm not rolling in cash, and no, I'm not backing anything right now. I need to have one of my big old, saviors or someone to say, listen, Andy, we want you as our leader here. You've demonstrated what it takes to be a strong leader, and especially in the large event and festival world. My big corporate clients aren't having the huge events that they used to have because of COVID. They still aren't having them yet. And
do you still talk to Billy?
Well, Billy is out of prison.
Yep. In March, I saw that.
Yep. And he's in a halfway house, I think, in Brooklyn. But he hasn't reached out yet, and I haven't reached out to him. So would I do another festival with him? I'm not saying absolutely not, but probably not. I don't, I would like to sit with him and see how he's doing and figure out what, he did obviously take advantage of a lot of people, and he did mismanage a lot of money, and he owes a lot of people a lot of money. And I'd love to hear how he plans on paying everybody back.
Oh, wow.
I'd be interested to hear that also. I think he's got some restrictions on him as part of his parole, however.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm
sure. Now, of course, it's always timing, and I had to be very careful. But like the last 6 months, I was working on a very large event, a music festival, but of course for the crypto world. And then crypto, as you know, kind of shit the bed.
Yeah.
So we put that on hold. We put that on hold last month. And so
I'm sure you had to survive the scrutiny of the authorities also. They had to see, and satisfy themselves that you weren't involved.
Absolutely. Right? But the crazy thing is that I never even had a signed contract. I never got paid a penny. I went down there as a favor, and then suddenly became like the producer. And
wow.
It's like, oh my word.
Well, Andy, Richard, this is another interview that we got to get a return guest, because we absolutely positively need another segment with Andy King.
100%.
Well, you guys, I appreciate you having me on. And you guys sound like you're spreading the love every week. I love that.
Every week, Andy. I'm going to get your contact info from Chelsea, and I'll stay in touch.
Okay, great.
This is Cars, Stars, and everything in between.
Thanks, Andy.
You're welcome, guys.
Somewhere.